Hi, I'm LCA-TV Executive Director Kevin Christopher, and joining me today for a discussion of Colchester's stormwater utility are Brian Osborne. Brian is the Director of Public Works for the town of Colchester, and Karen Purrington, who is the planner for the town of Colchester. Thanks for coming out today to talk about the stormwater utility.
Sure, thank you.
Brian, let's start with you. The basics, what is stormwater and why is it a problem for us in Colchester?
Sure. Well, simply stated, stormwater is any rain or snow melt that doesn't absorb into the ground as a result of impervious surfaces like driveways, rooftops, parking lots, things of that nature. And the problem is when that stormwater runoff runs off the land, it picks up any number of pollutants, whether it be automobile fluids, pesticides, fertilizers, sediment, and washes those into our receiving waters, whether it be Lake Champlain, Malletts Bay, our streams, rivers, inland ponds, etc.
Okay. And what is this new stormwater utility about?
Well, it's really no different than any other utility, like a water utility or a sewer utility that charges a fee for service. Right now, our stormwater program is paid for by property taxes. And what the stormwater utility does is it replaces those property taxes with stormwater user fees.
Okay. And what are the benefits of the utility over the current system you have in place?
Sure. Well, I think there's a number of benefits, one of which is we really believe it's a more equitable means of distributing stormwater costs throughout the community. As I mentioned, right now our program is paid for by property taxes, and the problem with that is there's very little relationship between the assessed value of a property and the amount of stormwater runoff that comes off a property. That's really a function of how much impervious surface there is, and that's why a utility uses impervious surface to calculate the fees instead of using the assessed values of properties. The other piece of that is there's a number of properties throughout the community that are exempt from property taxes, and therefore they do not contribute toward the town's stormwater efforts, and in many cases they have significant impervious surfaces. So as a result of being able to collect fees from those properties, the stormwater program will generate about $145,000 of new money coming into Colchester to help fund our stormwater efforts, which in part will allow us to increase our investment into water quality by about 60%. Other benefits of the stormwater utility: it allows the town, and better positions the town to preserve and protect our water resources for future generations. We think that's very important. And it also allows us to address a lot of the town's aging and failing infrastructure that's out there, and as well all the areas in town that were developed without any stormwater systems whatsoever. So I think those are the primary benefits of the stormwater utility.
Karen, can you tell us a little bit about how this all translates into fees for residents and businesses in Colchester? What is my stormwater fee based upon, and what will that fee be?
Sure. So let's start with how we came up with the numbers. So first we started by looking at aerial imagery that's for the entire town. And so what that provides for us is basically a catalog of all the impervious surfaces associated with ownership in Colchester. And so we've spent the last year or so connecting that aerial imagery to our assessor's database to identify the owners of those properties. And the basis of the utility is finding out the average amount of impervious surfaces on residential properties. So in that calculation, we determined it to be about 1/10 of an acre. So the average residential home in Colchester has about 1/10 of an acre of impervious, or around 4,000 square feet. And so that is the basis for the flat fee for residential customers. So most residential customers will pay the same fee. It'll be based on that average. Non-residential customers, mostly commercial entities and institutions, nonprofits, will be based on how much impervious surface is on their site, with that base 1/10 of an acre amount being the increment. So that's called 1 ERU, which stands for equivalent residential unit, and it just represents that 1/10 of an acre. So a property owner with 1 acre of impervious would be assigned 10 ERUs, each being 1/10 of an acre. And so the way we calculated out what the rate will be is basically a function of the budget proposed for the utility and how much impervious surface we have, which comes out to be around 1,800 acres. And so once you calculate how valuable each square footage of impervious surface should be, we come up with a $52.39 base fee for that 1/10 of an acre. And so ultimately, that's the bill that single-family property owners will receive in the mail, and then business owners and other not directly assessed properties will receive a bill for however many increments they have of the 1/10 of an acre impervious.
And how does that compare to what they're paying right now for stormwater?
Sure. So as Brian mentioned, through property taxes is how stormwater fees are currently raised. And so that will continue to be the case for a small portion. That the reason being the town has an obligation to pay for our roadways and our facilities, buildings, and so on. So we still have to raise our portion of the fee from property taxes. So for instance, the average single family home pays around $71 in property taxes that go to stormwater now. And they'll be receiving that bill for $52. There will probably be around $15 to $18 left on the tax bill for them. So they might see a $1 or $2 reduction for a significant increase in services that we're going to be able to provide under the utility.
And is everyone in Colchester paying this? Is anyone exempt?
Everyone in Colchester will receive a bill. So even folks that have totally vacant sites, even folks that are currently tax exempt, every property owner will receive a bill. There are some exceptions that we can talk about if you like, but there will be an owner of all the impervious in some manner.
Okay. Brian, are there any opportunities to reduce my bill if I'm having trouble paying that?
There are. We have a stormwater user fee credit manual proposed for this utility, and this allows the non-residential properties, the larger commercial properties with significantly more impervious surface, to apply for credits and receive credits or reductions of their stormwater fees up to a maximum of 50% for certain stormwater improvements that they may have or construct at a later date on their site that effectively reduces the amount of stormwater runoff from their site and or improves or increases the level of treatment of that stormwater runoff.
Okay. What's all this new money going to?
Well, the primary goals at this point are to address the more critical pollutants that are contaminating our received waters, and those are primarily phosphorus and sediment. And there's a number of capital initiatives that are underway now that are targeted at those pollutants that the stormwater utility would help fund. For example, we are currently developing a comprehensive stormwater management system for Inner Mallets Bay along West Lakeshore Drive, East Lakeshore Drive, and the upland watersheds of Crooked Creek, Smith Creek, and Shore Acres. We have several significant streams that are listed as being impaired by stormwater in Colchester that we're actually required to address under our federal stormwater permits, most notably Morehouse Brook and Sunderland Brook, so those will be targeted areas for funding through the stormwater utility. We also have about 13 miles of gravel roads. Gravel roads are particularly problematic from the standpoint of runoff in that they wash a lot of sediment and phosphorus into our receiving waterways, and there again under our federal stormwater permits we'll be required to upgrade those roads. There's also, as I mentioned earlier, a significant amount of aging and failing infrastructure that we have in our community, which is pretty typical, frankly, around the country. And then we also have many areas where there's no infrastructure at all. Areas of town were developed without any stormwater management systems. So that, along with the day-to-day operation and maintenance of the town's stormwater system, will be where these funds are targeted toward.
So how and when will all this be implemented for the residents and businesses in Colchester?
Sure. The way this gets implemented is through an amendment to our existing stormwater ordinance after it has gone through a public hearing process through the select board. They have an informational meeting scheduled for March 28th at 6:30 p.m. at the town offices where this utility will be presented, and they will be warning a public hearing for April 25th, at which point they would have the opportunity to approve amendments to our existing stormwater ordinance, which would in essence authorize the creation of the utility. Once that is done, the utility launch date would be July 1st of this year. The billing will be once a year. Bills, kind of an advance viewing bill would go out late summer, early fall with the actual bill going out probably in late January, somewhere in that time frame.
Okay. I know you've provided a pamphlet to everyone in Colchester, including that. What are ways to get more information about the utility?
I think the best way to get additional information about the utility is to visit a website, and I think we have our website link up on the screen now. If you visit that website, all the materials that have been developed over the last 2 years are on that website, including all of the presentations, the entire public input process, which includes a citizen working group that we've been working with for the past 18 months called the Stormwater Advisory Committee. All that information is on the website, and that's the best place. The other thing that's on that website that would be particularly of interest to people is a searchable database that shows every property in town and what you currently pay for stormwater in Colchester and what you would pay in the future under the utility if it were adopted. And certainly anyone can give us a call at the town office, so they can call me directly and I can answer any questions that they might have that they can't find answers for on the website.
Great, and we'll put your info up too as well.
Great.
Right now.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you both for joining us once again. Brian Osborne is the Director of Public Works for the town of Colchester, and Karen Purrington is a planner for the town of Colchester, and we've been talking about the Colchester Stormwater Utility that's coming down the pike here. Thanks again for joining us, and thank you for watching.